Hey there, I'm Jeff Elkins, and this is the Dialogue Doctor Podcast. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by editor, former bookstore owner, and author Tom Holbrook for a Time with Tom. All right, I am here. I'm going to keep this intro short because I'm talking to Tom today, and you might be able to hear some music playing behind me. I record this in my basement. I have 5 children. We live in a small home, and so sometimes things are happening around me when I'm writing or recording or things like that. And my son is listening to a record. He got into vinyl, and he is, I think it's a Kendrick Lamar record. Now that I think about it. What record are we listening to? He said Igor. We're listening to Tyler, the Creator, Igor. Only thing to note on Dialogue Doctor Space this week is that you can sign up for the Dash in the fall at dialoguedoctor.com. Click on the Dash button, or you can come and join the community. It's really fantastic. You're going to love it. Tom is a part of the community. That's how we met each other. And if you want to hang out with authors like Tom and I, go to patreon.com/Jeff Elkins. Sign up for $5 a month, or go to dialoguedoctor.com and click on the community button. It'll take you to the same place. I think that's it for this week, so let's get to the conversation with Tom.
All right, we are recording, and I have gotten my energy up. It's time with Tom. Time with Tom.
So much energy.
So much energy. I'm really
Hey,
tired.
it's 62 degrees here, and 2 days ago it was 100 degrees. So
You got 62
I've got
degrees?
energy. Yeah, it's amazing.
The
The whole
weather
heat dome,
almost
the heat
killed-
dome is shattered.
Yeah. The weather almost killed my wife yesterday. She
Tell me
was
more.
out, so she's doing this giant camp for like 500 kids.
Mhm.
And
Ugh.
this is what writers come to listen to, right? You
Yeah.
and I talk about random crap.
Are you kidding? Did you hear that hook? The heat almost killed my wife
the heat
yesterday.
almost
I
killed-
had to ask. I couldn't see okay, that's good. What's next?
That's right. You have to
Right?
turn the page. You have to. There's a monster at the end of this book. So she's doing this camp for 500 kids, and they have like 200 volunteers, and they have all these giant circus things that are out. Like there's 7 of them out in this giant field where the kids like meet, because the camp is outside.
Yeah.
And then they have all these like little pop-up tents, like you see everywhere. Like, you buy them at Sam's Club. They're like,
Mhm.
4
Easy
club
ups.
tents. Yeah, easy ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the leaders have been putting up these easy ups all week long in places where they get hot. So they weren't intended to be there, but they're all over the place. Now, something you need to know about the property is that it is a giant field, like 3 football fields, maybe 5 football fields worth of a field. Like if you put them in a rectangle together, not end to end.
Right.
And then at the end of those football fields, so like 3 football fields wide, at the end of that is a chain link fence that's about 5 feet tall. And at the end of over the chain link fence is a hill and Highway 83, which is an insanely busy interstate.
Is this going to be a story about bouncy houses flying away? Because that happens.
Tents flying away.
Yeah.
So
I've seen that happen too.
she's outside. She comes out. Everybody's gone. It's 4:00. She's like turning out the lights to the building. She comes outside and she sees there's this giant umbrella on the snack shack thing, and it is rolling toward 83. So she jumps in her car and she speeds through the field to get there. She tries to stop it with her car, but it literally just rolls over the hood. So she jumps out of her car and she grabs it, and she's holding it with both hands. And other people start showing up, which was good, because otherwise I do think she would have died. But she's holding onto it with both hands. And I've been told by other people that it was literally, she is a small woman.
Yeah.
It was literally just dragging her across the ground toward Highway 83. And it gets to the fence. And as she's at the fence, she's looking around, and there are all these other tents rolling toward Highway 83. And she's looking at Highway 83. It's rush hour traffic. People are going 80 miles an hour. She's like, I'm going to kill somebody. So this umbrella, she's holding onto it. It goes up and over the and she's like kind of lifted off of her feet. And then just at that moment, the wind stops. And like there's a break in the wind. She rips the thing over the fence and like puts the umbrella down real quick. And then she starts running across the fence to catch these other tents. And at this point, it's pouring rain on her. And she said her contacts were completely washed out. She can barely see. And she was wearing jean shorts and they're now soaked and like falling down. So she's like holding her shorts with one hand and she's like running down this fence, like trying to stop these tents. Another woman drives out that works with her, and that woman has like a giant like crocodile Dundee knife. And Wendy's holding the tents, and
Sure.
this woman's like slicing the tents with this giant crocodile Dundee knife. And no tents went on the highway. Everybody was fine. But there was a moment where she was like holding on to this umbrella and it just hopped right over the fence. And she was like, "This is where I die."
Have you read Ian McEwan? Anything?
Oh, maybe.
I think Atonement's on our list
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's one of the best books I've ever
Yeah.
read. But uh, there's a novel called Enduring Love, and the first chapter of it I actually read in the New Yorker, and it is one of the most riveting stories of all time. And it's very
Really?
similar to the story you just told about people who are hanging on to a rope of a balloon that's flying away, and like they come high enough off the ground that they have to decide whether they're going to let go or it's hard to describe, but it's absolutely like shattering.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's my fun story from this week. From the
And I'm pretty sure I
that's it.
listened to it. I think it was on a like New Yorker,
Hmm,
anthology of audio things or
that's
whatever.
nice.
But
Very cool.
uh,
Um, okay, so we've got our 7 questions. Our
yeah,
seven
it's
our
been so
seven
long.
Tom with Tom
I don't remember
questions.
what they are.
Oh,
And
nice.
I always like combine them and throw them off
Yeah,
anyway.
we
So
all we never answer them directly anyway, but we will start with them.
I
So
don't think anyone has a checklist at home.
I don't know. You might be surprised. Um, people who listen, I know I when I listen to podcasts, I do weird things. Um, sorry, excuse me. Okay, so first question. Give us an update. What are you working on and how's life going?
Well, I got a lot of middle-aged, middle-class guilt going on. Like I know we don't talk politics on this, but man,
Oh, just wait till I get to my
just
story that's broken. I've got a lot of politics for you.
is it the Democratic Party? Is that the story that's broken?
I read a book that I'm going to complain about.
Where
Um,
uh
you can't skip ahead. Why you
yeah,
got middle class guilt going on?
just because the world's falling apart, my life is fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And uh, you know, I, I'm not wealthy. I didn't grow up wealthy.
Mhm.
Uh, it was a big deal when my sister went to college because we or moved out of the house because we upgraded from Tang to Minute Maid orange juice.
Mhm.
That was the never wanted for anything, but certainly didn't
Yeah.
have, all the luxuries. Uh, yeah, and my life's great. I'm working on all these self-improvement things. I was telling you I hit 200 days on learning French on Duolingo.
Yeah.
Um, I'm on a 7-day streak of getting my 10,000 steps in, and
Yeah.
I'm almost caught up on editing, which has been great. I've got lots of work. Can't complain. I got a whole, I can't complain. I have lots and lots of paperwork to do. All this stuff from the old bookstore that I haven't finished dealing with yet, from like taxes and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I just keep pushing down the pushing down the road. But I had a nice little vacation up in North Conway, and that got me back into on a reading kick, which is good. When you're an editor, you spend a lot
Nice.
of time reading
It
other
can be
stuff.
tough.
It
Yeah.
can be tough to then read. And I had like 3 different things that were going on that hadn't been finished that I finished. So one was My Friends, which I think could be Bachman's best.
That's great. Yeah. I mean,
Maybe you said you
it's
started it,
freaking
but
amazing.
he does things that shouldn't work, and that's always, I think, a great. Um, like he's super repetitive, or he'll tell you what's
Hmm.
going to happen, and then he'll tell you what's going to happen, and then he'll tell you what's going to happen, and then he'll actually change it when he gets there, and
Yeah.
he'll introduce a new character quarter of the way in.
Yep.
Just like it's just things he shouldn't get away with. And this is the audio. I'm not sure where else I've said this, but I literally wept the entire time I was listening to it.
Mm,
Just like I
yeah.
listen to it on audio, walking or driving. I drive up and visit my parents every Friday, and it's a good time because I can't listen to fiction unless I'm doing nothing else.
Yeah.
Like I can't be like in the kitchen doing
Doing
dishes and
dishes.
listening to
Yeah. Yeah.
fiction. Can't do it. And then just weep because the whole focus of the book are these kids whose lives are so much harder than kids should lives should have to be.
Yeah.
And it, and we are the adults. We are the ones who have allowed it to happen as a society. So
Yeah.
uh, it's also very, very funny. I mean, I weep, but it is
It's hysterical and it's
very,
very
very
profound.
funny.
Yeah. One of the things he
Yeah.
says earlier is one of the main characters says, my friend didn't die from suicide. She was murdered by the burden of reality.
Yeah. There's so many
Like what?
things.
What
And
the
I
hell?
know. And just, the narrator making philosophical pronouncements. You're not supposed to
Yeah,
do
you're not
that.
supposed to do that, but it works
It
so
totally works.
well in this
The
book.
callback,
Yeah.
he loves callbacks,
Hmm.
which I love callbacks too, but he loves making the same joke 10 times.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I
And,
mean that's a Bachman thing. He does that in every book.
uh,
He just keeps
and
bringing the
I
same
think we've
joke.
talked about this before where he starts a story in the middle and makes you laugh at something and then explains the backstory to it, which makes you
Yeah, it
cry.
makes it
Yeah.
tragically horrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's a in the opening there's a homeless man in an alley who is comical with a
Yeah.
cat until you find out who it is. And it's not funny anymore. And you're like,
Speaking
oh,
of,
this isn't funny. Yeah.
my cat is either hiding behind the boxes or there's a giant rat in my
Oh,
house. I'll let you know.
okay.
Who
I'm
knows?
excited to
Could
find
be a
out.
raccoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I finished that. I finished The Library at Mount Char. Have you heard of this book?
No.
It just kept showing up on a bunch of sci-fi best of shot sci-fi
Huh.
books. It is batshit crazy.
Really?
Um, I had a lot of issues with it, but I was also like bowled over by its originality.
Okay.
It
Scott
has this,
Hawkins.
yeah, it has this American Gods kind of feel to it, where like right in the middle of Middle America, there's this guy who's 60,000 years old, and he has basically kidnapped and raised these 12 kids to sort of carry on his legacy, and they're each learning a different discipline.
Okay.
And you know, um, and he's a tyrant, and they're trying to one of them's trying to overthrow him, and it's hard to explain, but it's all done in like suburban America.
Gotcha.
Um,
Fascinating.
yeah, it's wild,
Yeah.
totally wild. And I reread Girl's Guide to Hunting and Fishing,
Okay.
which was published
You
in
are reading a lot,
1999.
man.
I know, it's great. I
You're
mean,
reading a ton. Yeah.
well, two of those were finishing. I'd started them, but
Yeah.
Girl's
Yeah.
Guide to Hunting and Fishing, began and ended. It's sort of linked short stories, and rereading it, I didn't like it as much. It's still brilliant. It reminds me so much of Laurie Moore, who I love, but just the deadpan humor.
Yeah.
But did something I liked, which is the character is older in each short story. Like she starts out as a teenager, and then she's like college age, and then she's 20 something.
Nice.
And hadn't realized Melissa Bank had this weird life where like she was almost done writing that book, and she had a traumatic brain injury from a bike accident and couldn't read or write for 3 years,
Wow.
and then finished it, and then ended up, I hadn't realized when I picked it back up that she died in 2022 from lung cancer. So
Wow.
weird, but
That's
funny. The
wild.
kind of stupid jokes I like. They're like one point where he's telling, it's about this guy, one story where the guy is and this woman, I can't remember her name, but we'll say Louise, are getting married, and his mother says, have you decided on a date for the wedding? And he's like, well, I think I should bring Louise, don't you? It's that kind of like stupid puns
Yeah. That's really
that I
funny.
love. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that
That's
kind
great.
of
Yeah. That's hysterical. Are you writing anything?
stuff. No, should be. but
Okay.
I'm
No guilt for me.
almost caught up on work, which is great. So I'm
That's
hoping
nice.
that will lead to some writing.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, that was a long answer, but books. It's really fun
No.
to be reading books.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Um, I finished my second screenplay. I've got a goal of
Awesome.
4 this year. And so I was trying to finish 1 1/4. I finished my second one. This one was an interesting adventure. My friend Sean, who is a fabulous screenplay writer that has had a career in it and is now in his 70s, wanted to help me. So he gave me some of his that were optioned and told me to rewrite them. Not made, but optioned. So,
Yep, you told me
um,
about this one. So
yeah,
the first one was like the
first one was just
Amazing
one I
Race type
wrote.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was just me figuring out how to write screenplays. I did submit it to a contest and I got feedback on it. The feedback was good. It was pretty much like, hey, you've got some inside jokes here that nobody understands but you. And the feedback writer was like, I can tell that they're funny to you, but no, nobody else is going to understand them. I was like, oh,
Isn't
yeah.
that the feedback Laura always gives you?
Yeah, well, no, Laura's feedback is always like it is around the like this is funny to you, but it's not that it's an inside joke. It's
Yeah.
that like I'm spending a lot of time on something that she finds boring. And she's like, this isn't funny to me. And I'm like, well, it's because you don't have a sense of humor. No, so it's objectively funny. It's not. It usually needs to be cut. But yeah, so that was the feedback on the first screenplay was really good. It was like, hey, the characters are great. There were 2 characters I wrote that definitely popped more than any of the other characters, and the feedback was like, you need to figure when you find a character voice like that, you have to figure out how to put it more into the story. And I took that to Sean. I asked him why, and he was like, because an actor will latch onto a character voice like that. And when you're writing a screenplay, if a great actor latches onto a character voice like that, the studio is going to give it somebody else to rewrite. They're going to be like, hey, get this, Brad Pitt wants to play this
Yeah.
character, make this character bigger. And so he was like, so the feedback's good. You might as well just make the character bigger. So that's just an interesting take on like something that's different from screenplay writing than novel writing that I thought was
Yeah.
fascinating is that you're considering how actors will want to participate in this collaboration.
Well, it's like in playwriting, one of the big things is like smallest number of characters
Hmm.
because they're thinking about production and how expensive it is to
Yeah.
produce.
Screenplay writing right now, a big thing is smallest number of locations. Can you get it into like 1 or 2
Mhm.
inexpensive locations?
Oh, speaking of which, I just watched with my 14-year-old
What was
two
that?
nights ago was The Breakfast Club,
Oh, how did it play with a
which is
14 year
which is
old?
all one location. I mean,
It's all, yeah, it's all in that
yeah,
school. Yeah.
it's almost all in the library. They barely,
Yeah.
uh,
A lot of
she liked it.
talking. A lot of talking.
Yeah, it holds up,
Really?
except for the part that didn't hold up when it first came out, which was
Yeah.
the horrible like makeover of Ali Sheedy at the end, which nobody
Yeah.
wanted because she was
Yeah.
the most interesting character the way she was.
Yeah.
But no, just like these conversations that are teenagers like.
Yeah. That's fascinating. But yeah, so the one I
And
finished this time was a like drive across America script. And it was interesting. It was fun to write. It was interesting to like figure out how to get scenery in there and like how to make it part of the plot and but yeah, but I finished it and gave it to him last week. So it's good to stay on task. And then JP and I are writing Nerd Season 2. We got a Kickstarter in October for like fancy nerds, like gilded books with, you know, decorative pages and
mhm.
art by real artists, not by AI, but real hand-drawn stuff. And so so I'm finishing season 2 and it's really fun to write. I'm realizing now looking back that I spent a year and a half working on this memoir that was depressing and sad and kind of put me in a bad headspace. And now that I've gotten away from it and I'm writing nerds again, I'm having a really good time. It's really fun. But
Good.
yeah, it
Good.
doesn't solve. We do have like I have worked myself into multiple problems in which I have several characters with giant voices, and we're 96 chapters into this thing now, like because the first book was 66 chapters, 30 chapters into the current thing, and I'm so sick of these big voices. And I keep telling JP, I'm like, I'm gonna kill these characters. And he's like, no, you cannot.
You
Like, I'm
can.
so
You
tired
can.
of them. I'm so
Or
tired of them. Yeah, I need to murder
you can
all
do
of them.
something, you know, or have something mysterious disappearance.
Yeah, and I have done that with a couple of them.
Just
I've
have a
been
character
like,
mysteriously disappear and
yeah.
have, you can, if you want to solve it later, you can, but if you don't want to, they're
One
gone.
of the characters is a ghost of a Korean drill sergeant, a Korean War drill sergeant.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and he's just exhausting to write. So I made him afraid of the villain in season 2, so he's always running away at the opening of scenes. Fantastic. I don't have to write his. JP's like, this is getting a little old. But anyway, he hasn't said that to me, but I can feel it in his notes. Yeah, so that's my update. Yeah, I think that's everything. Oh, I've got a bunch of talks coming up. I'm doing well, I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, that's everything for me. Okay, so we talked about My Friends. Is that the best story you've consumed lately? Question number two.
Sorry, I'm still worried about the.
Yeah, is it a rat?
No, it's the cat.
Okay. Is it
Gotta.
trapped? Do you need to
No,
rescue it?
no, I can see her.
Okay.
So I have there's a sloped ceiling room with it has bookcases up against, so it creates a little storage space behind,
Yeah.
and she likes to hide out there.
Okay.
And
Nice.
who knows what? It's probably
Yeah.
throwing up back there or
Yeah.
pooping, or who
Pooping.
knows.
Yeah.
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 Uh,
Whenever my dog goes into a corner where we can't see him, we're like, dang it, he's going to the bathroom back there.
yeah. I mean, everything. It did. My friends. It just I can't even.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny. This probably happens to many of our many listeners, but my wife is in 2 book groups, and there is a tyranny to it where she can't read anything else.
Yeah. You got it. You got to stick with the community.
And like, not only, and so like, I gave her a copy of My Friends for our anniversary, which was at the beginning of the month, and she put it on the stack of the like book that I gave her for Christmas and the book that I gave her for her birthday that she hasn't read yet because she's every 2 weeks she's got a book group, and that's about how long it takes her to read a book because she's a busy person.
Yeah.
And not a wastrel like myself. She has an actual job that people depend on her for. So but I want to give it to my 16-year-old. I mean, it's a perfect book for a 16.
It's a perfect book for a 16-year-old. Yeah, it's really good.
And it's fun because it's different than maybe it's because there's adults in it too, and it goes back and forth, but it's different than reading like a John Green, who is basically the John Hughes of
our generation.
2000s,
Yeah.
right. It's different than that, and yet because it has a sort of removed voice of wisdom, but I don't know. I think it's a great book. So yeah, nice. It's a story that worked.
Yeah.
Another story. Sorry. That mostly worked. And this is embarrassing to admit, but I really like the Mission Impossible movies, except for the second one, which was just god awful.
Yeah, I just watched through all of them with my daughter.
I did too.
To watch
by
the
myself
last one
because no one watched them. But I really liked the last
They're
one.
great. Yeah, number 3 was amazing. I'd forgot how good it is. Is it really? Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Who knows how to layer on the emotional tension as much as the action tension.
Yeah.
I really liked number 6, which was
who's in that one?
Henry Cavill.
Yeah, that's a great one too. That's a really good one. Yeah.
Anyway, they're fun. But a thing that's broken, which people should watch out for, is AI is a terrible villain.
It's awful.
Because there's no screen presence. There's nobody.
It's an awful villain.
Eze Morales is great as the like sort of surrogate bad guy, but
you have to give it a surrogate. You can't just let it be AI. And it immediately makes it unrealistic because it's like, would it need a surrogate? Like, why would it have this dude running around with an earpiece in?
Right.
Yeah, it's a weird, yeah. You think it should be more like Final Destination, where things are just happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, but just an example of how what a whore I am for stories. I mean, I love James Bond. I love Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
I love J.J. Abrams, but I also love foreign films and
Yeah,
hard
well, I
books.
mean, Mission
And
Impossible has like is like its own genre of story, right? Like, and there are things that I expect from a Mission Impossible story. I'm like, I expect running. He
right,
better run. I expect some kind of insane jump and hanging off of things.
yeah,
These also must happen. I expect larger than life villains that whose plots don't necessarily need to make sense. They don't need to
yeah.
make, yeah. But
Oh, that
that's
was the
yeah.
great thing about number three too. Was Philip Seymour Hoffman was
Oh yeah, he was
awesome.
incredible. He was incredible. Yeah. Um,
Anyway, what about you?
I'm reading through this. We were talking about this before we hit record, but I've been reading through all of the Simon Rich books. Um, I listened to him on a podcast with Neil Brennan. Neil Brennan does a podcast where they like get deep about personal issues, like about it's almost like a hey, let's talk about what your therapist taught you. And Simon Rich was on there, and I was like, this guy's fascinating, and I don't know anything about him, and I've never heard of him before. So, and he talked about how he was writing books. So I went and read a bunch of his books. I read Glory Days, which is his latest short story collection from 2024. It's incredible. It's the audiobook's read by John Mulaney. And I think every short story in there is really funny. Um, and just strong. I read New Teeth, which is another one. I read Spoiled Brats, which is very unbalanced. One of the short stories is three-quarters of the book, but that short story was so good. I was like, you should have just published this as a standalone novella because it's really great. And then I read his novel. I read What in God's Name, which was he published in 2012, but it's about a group of angels who are in charge of minor inconsequential miracles.
Which they made into a TV show.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
I think Daniel Radcliffe was in it. It's called
Oh,
like Miracle Workers or something like that.
fascinating. I'll have to check that out. But it's funny because they're not allowed to break the laws of nature. So they like, how do I make this guy sick on Thursday?
Right.
I'm going to turn his refrigerator off every night while he goes to bed so his milk spoils. And then he gets sick and he throws up. Like it's just little stuff like that. Like it's just funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really good. It was really good. Highly recommend Simon Rich.
Oh, but on audio, because started listening to the new one, and the the audio is incredible.
Yeah,
The story about Mario is just
yeah.
incredible.
Glory Days is much better. I think Glory Days is much. I read and listened, like I jumped back and forth. It's a much better because John Mulaney's the audio narrator. It's a much better listen than it is a read because there's just something about the way he reads things that's really funny. Um, yeah, Simon Rich said this interesting thing, which I've really seen in his fiction, since we are talking to writers, and we should probably bring writing
Yes.
stuff into this. He said, what makes something funny is you take a character who's just a little dumber than the reader, and you put them in an impossible situation. And the reader goes, that's hysterical. But he said, but the key is the character has to be a little dumber than the reader. That's what makes it funny. Yeah.
Interesting.
I thought that was great.
I mean, I think it's funny when you do that, but I don't think that's the only way to make something funny.
No,
That's his
that's
way.
his
Yeah.
approach to comedy. You take a character, make them a little bit dumber than the reader, and then put them in an impossible situation. And dumber doesn't mean less smart. Like I know a lot of his stories, like he's got one story called Thanksgiving Writer, which is it's written like a contract of a music band coming to a venue, but it's a 20 something woman coming home for Thanksgiving. And it's all about like Gary, who I shall not call dad, will not poop in the bathroom next to the bed that said artist shall be staying in during her week. She does not care if Gary like it's like
Yeah.
it's really funny. And she's not like necessarily less intelligent as a character, but she's just a little less like she's a little more extreme in her opinions than
Mhm.
any reader would be. And it's what makes it funny. Yeah, anyway, I just think it's if anybody wants to read comedy, it's which I feel like I really needed. One of the reasons I read it was because I got a little heavily engaged in political doom spiraling. And I was like, I need to read something funny. I need to like recenter because my like becoming depressed is not helping anybody. So yeah. Anyway. Okay, story that's broken. You got a story that's broken?
Um, well, the whole AI thing. Um,
Oh, in Mission Impossible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the yeah, I don't know. I've been working on a lot of people's manuscripts, and one thing I've seen is um, relying on an invented mechanism for expedition,
Hmm.
like the one I'm thinking of is like newscasts inserted in,
Yeah.
um, which should work maybe, but if
Yeah.
the reader can tell this is only here to give me information, then it's gonna fail.
Did you ever read World War Z? It's kind of
No,
like a string
but
of newscasts, and
yes,
it
but that's
works.
different. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's right. But that's its premise,
Yeah,
right?
it's not
Is that
inserted
yeah?
in. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this is there's something happening globally, and you find out about it by characters watching a newscast. Which it just think of how many movies you've watched where they're in a bar and one of them says, "Wait, turn that up, will you?" to the
Yeah. And
bartender.
there's a
To the
newscast
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like exposition, exposition.
Do androids dream of electric sheep? Kind of does that because they keep watching the talk show, the 24-hour, 7 day a week talk show. And the talk show is the one that like informs you of the religious battle happening in the world around them between the
Yeah,
talk show people and the
which has nothing to do with the rest of the
no, it
plot.
doesn't. Well, I mean, come on, we can argue about what the plot of that book is. But
Absolutely.
yeah, no, that's really interesting. Um, I read Original Sin by Jake Tapper, which is his he interviewed 200
Please,
people.
that it's his. Please pay me to tell you the thing that I should have told you back when it made a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
make me furious.
It
That'd make me
wasn't
light my hair on fire,
it
mad.
wasn't great. And I won't get into the politics of it. I mean, I will say if 20% of it is true, then we may need to burn it all down. But I think the reason I would say it's a broken story, even for a nonfiction book, is because there's no, it's like a research project in which no conclusions are drawn. So, like, I do a lot of like NIH grant work for my day job, and we have to write papers, and you write the methodology, and you write the like discoverability, and then you always write the conclusion. So this means this thing, and even if your conclusion is inconclusive, you still write a conclusion. You still write like it could mean this or it could mean this. There's no conclusion to it. It's just reporting on frustrating, impossible things like a year and a half too late. And it's it was maddening. So
That
yeah.
reminds me, there was another book I finished, which I'd been listening to for like 3 months, and that was Abundance, which I know you
I read that one
listened to
too.
also, which
Yeah.
is which is great, but also totally broken
Yep.
because it doesn't anticipate any. refutations.
Yeah.
So it's like we need to build more things in America, but there's too much bureaucracy, which that's a great premise. But it's more than just that. It's not just too much bureaucracy. It's that we don't build things in America because we rely on cheap labor elsewhere. And so there should be a yeah, but what about union workers? Right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, what about fair wage? Yeah,
Yeah.
what about, how do we get to this place where we're making things in the US without uh, solving all those problems? But
And
I
I
also thought it was great. I also thought their ideas were that they really are pinpointing the problem. I mean, the whole thing is basically one sentence, which is if you believe in the Republicans, by attacking government, have made Democrats defend government. And if you're going to defend government, then government has to work.
yeah,
And it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. Yeah.
Uh,
Like there's a commonality between the two books in which I think the speed at which they were written is a problem. There's a They both felt like they needed more time in the cooker. Um, and I can like, I mentioned earlier the memoir that I wrote for a year and a half. I got to the end of it and it's fine. It's well written. It's got interesting stories. It's funny, but I could just feel like this isn't ready. And I got to say, over the last like 9 months that I haven't been writing it, like, every once in a while I'll be like, oh, this is missing. This is
yeah.
missing from that book. And I'll go back and I'll add it, or I'll go back and I'll kind of tinker with it a little bit, but not too much. But I'm just like, hey, I needed distance to like give this a deeper thought. And I think both of those books could use with some cooking, with some distance. Um, because they're trying to say very meaningful things, but they feel very rushed, especially Tapper's book. It's very well written. It's almost painfully well written, but it's as in like it's very readable. Uh, and it's done in the like uh Bob Woodward style of political journalism where it's written in like third person, close almost at times. But it just didn't land the plane. And I was like, if you write a book like this, you better land the frickin' plane. Um, yeah, anyway. So
Okay.
yeah. Any other books, stories that are broken
No, that's good.
for you? No. I did rewatch Andor. That's a story before I had said was broken on one of ours like years ago.
Did
And
you?
yeah. And I didn't because I didn't like Andor. I thought it was moving too
Oh,
slow. I was really mad that they kept changing characters every 2 episodes. I was like, why do I have a new batch of characters now? But they came out with season 2, and I was like, I'm going to give season 1 another watch. And watch season 2. And I watched it straight through. I didn't have to do the like wait for a week.
right.
And when I watched it straight through, I came to understand, oh, this is a mosaic plot. There is one character that's moving through multiple short stories. And after 3 episodes, the story ends and we're on to another short story that he's in. And once I got that, I was like, I really enjoy this now. But it took me it took me watching more than 4 episodes
Yeah.
to understand the structure of the show, the structure of the plot. Once I got the structure of the plot, I was like, okay, I can chill out and just enjoy this thing. I don't need to like try to figure out why I'm moving on to a new cast and a new planet and a different world and so once I got I really liked it. It's very well done. But it's was interesting to me because it was one that I was like I felt was broken and I walked away from. Mostly, I think because of the pace at which I was trying to consume it, which was one 30-minute segment pretty much a week.
Yeah.
And like it needs to be watched as a very long 8-hour movie, not
And
one.
that can happen with books too.
Oh, totally. You can read a chapter,
If
put
you
it down, come
if
back
you're
to it.
reading
Yeah.
too short a bits.
Mhm.
All right, what's
Um,
next? Number
Questions or
12.
questions or challenges you've faced recently as an editor?
Uh,
I
oh,
mean, you're
here's an
not just
interesting one
editing,
because
you're producing as well.
yeah,
So,
I'm gonna blame you for this one.
yay.
Uh, I I have a coaching client and I convinced them to do a dialogue only first draft.
Nice.
And the you know, the well bob, as they say, the bob, you know that phrase?
No, I don't.
You've never heard that phrase? It's a
No.
great phrase. It's when you're using dialogue to give exposition that no
Ah,
people wouldn't actually say. Well, Bob, back when I
gotcha.
worked for the aeronautics department and we were on this top secret mission
That's
in
really funny.
Moscow, you know, um,
My wife and I use the National Lampoon's vacation phrase. You see, kids?
yeah.
Yeah.
uh, and, um, so, and I'm like, yeah, I understand what you're doing and I understand this is the first draft, um, but it's killing the dialogue.
Yeah.
So, you know, um, yeah, and so now on the rewrite I'm having to say you need more here, you need to. It also makes um you talk a lot about like making the characters sort of sit with the emotion,
Yeah.
and that's really hard to do when it's all dialogue because it speeds up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Everything's moving fast.
slow
Yeah.
down. Their mother they just found out their mother was dead. You got to
Yeah.
slow. You can't say, well, what's going to happen to me,
Yeah.
right? Like first they have to be like, so
A lot of
um
exchanges where no content happens and they're just like,
yeah.
she's dead. Yeah.
But I but I'm doing it with this writer because before that it was all over prose. Like it was just
Mm,
like, I'm going to tell you, the narrator, I'm going to tell you everything that's happening.
yeah.
And so it was, so now I'm looking for a happy medium, uh,
Nice.
but yeah, so that was interesting. And I was like, I caused this.
Yeah, I did this to myself
I
and to this
I
writer.
caused this.
I'm torturing
And
both
it
of
made
us.
me wonder, I'm going to have to think more about how I describe what I want people to
Yeah.
do when they do that.
Yeah.
Because it definitely helped her with her storytelling.
Yeah.
But then the whole thing had to be, I send these messages to these clients where I'm like, now it's gonna look bad. The attached. I'm like, I've attached the file with my markup.
That's right.
Now it's gonna look bad, but
Yeah.
it's not really that bad.
It's gonna hurt your
It's
feelings. But I
it's and the point is that we're doing this as it's coaching rather than a full, finished document. So ideally there will be fewer and fewer comments as we go,
yeah,
right?
that's what I always
Like,
tell the people I coach. I'm like, hey, don't judge by the number of comments I give you. Judge by the ratio of comments you're getting per page. Because that should be going down.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I love doing it and it slows me down, but I always give a reason for a change.
Yeah.
It could be as small as like misplaced modifier or need more here or whatever. But
Yeah.
sometimes I'll digress into like more philosophical ideas, like
Yeah.
reader burden.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, when I'm
Yeah.
trying to explain to somebody why they have to move the dialogue tag earlier in the,
Yeah.
it's like if you have and I see this sometimes on professional work where it's like a 3 sentence quote and then at the end says she said, and it's just like I can't make it past the first sentence without skipping ahead to see who's
So
talking.
who read it? And then you
And
make me go back.
right. And
Yeah.
then you've popped me out of the
And now I'm tired and I want to go to bed.
yeah.
Now you made me think about it. And I want to go to sleep.
But that
Yeah.
idea, and again, this is your concept of reader burden, but that idea that the reader is not going to say, oh, the reader burden was too high. They're just going to see like, it didn't really grab me.
Yeah. They're going to go, meh.
But that's what it is you're making them do too much work.
Yeah. You're wearing them out. Yeah. That's funny. Um, Well, I'm glad that my ideas, that my contributions to conversations have helped and tortured you at the same time.
Yes.
That's really my sweet spot. Um, yeah, I think for me, I'm really struggling with the question around. So this is a deeper question for editors in general, but so many of us, myself included, edit to specific styles. And as an editor, we're kind of calling balls and strikes. We're playing referee or umpire. We're like, this is right, this is wrong. And as I've started working with more people who are writing outside of genre, who are like, I don't want to write fast, publish, repeat. I don't want to like play the genre game. I'm writing the work of my heart. I've really started to watch myself and make sure I'm asking the question, what do you want out of this? As opposed to me just telling you that it's wrong. Because, like, well, I had a really good conversation with somebody I edited, and I can talk about this because they're going to be the conversation we have will be on the podcast in September. Um, but that's my backlog right now. The editing sessions go all the way to September.
Wow.
I know. So, it'll come out in September. But they Pa, um, who you know, who's part of the community, they wrote a very non-traditional book, and I remember working on it with them last year when I first really started asking myself this question of like, what does it mean to help somebody create the art they want to create, as opposed to telling them what is right art and what is wrong art. And it was a good it was a good series of coaching sessions. We did like 8 sessions where I was looking at very specific chapters they'd written and helping them think about how to position this work that they'd made. And we just had a conversation recently where they've actually won this very prized fellowship because of the work, and they're working with these literary agents and authors on the work. And it's this very like cool thing that's come out of this. The work is very non-traditional. It doesn't follow any of the right rules of plot. It doesn't follow any of the right rules of length or like story pacing, or even the scene structures can be very different. And I kept asking them, is this what you want? Is this what you want? And they kept saying, I was like, this is the impact it's having on me as your
Yeah.
reader. Is this what you want? And they kept going, I think it is. And I kept going, okay, that's not what is like considered traditional knowledge. And they'd be like, no, this is what I want. And they're uh right from an autistic perspective, and they were like, no, I see the world differently. I want to write differently. And it's really paid off for them. And so as an editor, I'm struggling more and more with watching my own advice, making sure I'm not just telling people how to write books that I like, but helping them make the art they want to make, if that makes sense. And I think
Yeah.
it's a
No,
really good
it makes
question.
sense because that's how I've always done it because
Yeah.
nobody I work with is gonna be a bestseller. I mean, maybe they will. Who knows? But like, I start every conversation with like, I'm charging you money that you are unlikely to earn back through sales because books don't sell.
Yeah. Yeah. I had one of your
That
clients actually tell me that you told them that. And they're like,
yeah.
that honesty was great. I really needed to hear that.
With that in mind, the question is what what do you want your book to be? And most new writers are writing the book of their heart. Even if it's a
Yeah.
genre, even if it's a thriller
Yeah.
especially if it's a fantasy. People writing fantasy, that most of them are not calculating. They're like, I've just always seen these characters and whatever. And I think our job is not to say, here's what you have to do to make this be a bestseller, because you'd be lying because you don't know.
Yeah. Because you don't know. Yeah.
Our job is to say, the way you've written this is what's happening. If
Yeah.
that is that what you want? And sometimes they're like, oh no, I didn't mean that. Right.
Yeah.
Or to say, like, here's the rule, and you don't have to follow that rule, but it's going to jar people. It's going to jar the reader out of their flow. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that may be what you want. And that may work, but it also might not.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. I had an example recently, and it's fled my mind already. But it was like you just got to know that this is people are going to stumble over this.
Yeah. Well, it's that like it's the message of that book, The Anti-Racist Workshop.
Yes.
And I read that book 2 years ago with JP, and it really it's still impacting my thinking today around like, hey, what am I in a position of power? What am I saying is right and wrong about other people's art? That
Hmm.
maybe not. It's just because of the tradition that I come from that makes this right or wrong.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know.
Here, you know, what a good example. Are you familiar with the musician Mitski?
No.
Mitski's a singer. She's kind of like cross between Laurie Anderson and an opera singer.
Okay.
Uh, very dramatic, very theatrical,
Okay.
and um, I wish I liked her work more than I do, but I admire it because she's like, I don't need verses or choruses. I will
Fascinating.
just start singing and then I will stop singing.
Yeah.
I don't need my vocal melody to necessarily gel perfectly with the instrumental melody. It can
Yeah.
wander.
Yeah.
And she's got a huge following. She's good. And
Yeah. It's
we
fine.
saw I and all of my new music comes through my oldest kid. uh, which is great.
Yeah.
But we went and saw her in concert, and it was phenomenal. It was very theatrical and grand, and yeah, check it out. But
That's
she's
fun.
she's just saying, I know this isn't the way people will tell you it needs to be done,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it anyway, and I won't, and I'll have a much smaller niche following.
Yeah. My,
You can't do that and then say like, I hate the establishment. I'm not on the top 40, right? You can't
no.
knowingly be
Yeah.
different than the expectations and then be pissed that people aren't
Yeah.
who want the expectations down. So
It reminds me like my 15-year-old has introduced me to Kendrick Lamar and Tyler, the Creator. And both of them, their songs are way more like jazz than they are traditional rap. And Kendrick Lamar is fascinating because a lot of times, especially his more like, I'd say fan driven work as opposed to like the popular stuff, but the stuff that like only his like deep cuts that people listen to that really love him listening to. He's rapping on top of Coltrane. And like it's a very weird, like, this is weird. It works, but it's weird. And like, or Tyler the Creator, who I've really come to love, he's got a song that'll just rip your heart out about it starts off with a recording of his mother apologizing for never having his father in his life
wow.
and saying it's not he's a good guy. It's not that he wasn't a good guy. It's that I didn't want him in my life, so I told him he couldn't be a part of yours. And so the song's called Like Him. And then he's singing, rapping about this ghost that he's supposed to be like that he's never seen or met.
Yeah.
And it is the most heart-wrenching piece of I don't know what to call it besides poetry. Like it's just deep and painful.
Mhm.
But it's yeah, anyway. I think there's a beauty to kind of creating the art that you want to create and
Yeah.
not worrying about the conventions to it.
Yeah. I think if you're, yeah, you're, I mean, Jeff, you're not going to be the person who's like, no, you're wrong.
Because I have systems, this is where I struggle as an editor. Because I have systems, because I'm like, here's how dialogue works on the page. Here's how I can get to a place where I'm like, this isn't right. And I have to stop myself and be like, no, no, no. It's not accomplishing a thing that you wanted to accomplish, but tell them what it's accomplishing and then see if that's what they want, as opposed to being like, it's this wrong. Um, and being open just, as I'm reading things, being open to, like you were saying with my friends, believing the narrator shouldn't make philosophical statements, but being open to like, but it is and it's working, and why is it working? Why is that working
Right.
right now? And I would say in my friends, it's working because the characters are so vulnerable. The narrator's literally just commenting on their bleeding wounds. Like it's a, the characters are very philosophical, so it lends to the narrator having these rants um about the characters. But anyway. Okay, next question. Any issues or problems you're pondering that we haven't discussed when it comes to editing?
No, no, I'm in a good place. I
Okay.
mean, I got a lot of work and it's keeping me busy and it's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am constantly managing expectations. I think it's super important.
Your expectations or the
No,
expectations of others?
expectations of others.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, super important and super hard because I think people, well, it's just funny. Like I read, I'm not going to say names. I belong to every like author services Patreon there is, and I was reading um one of their recent like here are the questions that I get asked by authors, and they were the same questions that they got asked by authors when I first started engaging with them 10 years ago as an author. And I'm like, it's funny to me that like we just keep cycling through the same questions.
Well,
So
it's because people who solve those questions then move on.
yeah,
And
but yeah,
it's
and
not
they
the
move
same
on.
people asking the
No, it's
same
not the same
questions.
people.
It's the
But
same
that's what I
people
mean. Is
answering
it's
the
the
same
same people
questions.
answering them. Yeah. So, but that's why I appreciate the work you're doing because I think
Yeah,
it's a
but the beauty of explaining something to someone
yeah,
that they think is magic and you're like, no, it's just
yeah,
it's the way it's been for
yeah. You're
1,000 years.
asking the same question that I've answered for 10 people. Like it's
And it
not.
happens to me too, though. I was just thinking about this. I don't want us to go too far over because my family's waiting for me to watch Castle with them, which is like,
That's hysterical.
if you want formula, there it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
You
There it
know,
is. Yeah.
but it's enjoyable. But no, last year I did this project where I read a bunch of cozy mysteries and took notes on them because
Yeah.
for future work. And I also read a like how to write a cozy mystery book, which I was like, this is going to be dumb. But you know what? There was one book that was very well written that it just sort of died in the middle for me. And when I read the mystery book, I was like, there's no second body drop.
Fascinating.
And it doesn't have to necessarily be another dead body if you're
No.
sometimes, but it's that scene about, you know, 20% after the first
Hmm.
crime scene where um like the detective goes to interrogate their lead suspect and their lead suspect is dead on the floor, right?
Yeah.
Like you recognize it when you see it,
Yeah.
but you don't, as this goes back to reader burden, you don't recognize what you're not seeing. And so even and
Yeah.
like I can tell a new author, like, hey, you've done this wrong with character arc, or there's no, this isn't
Yeah.
working because the characters has no flaw, which is a huge one for
Yeah.
first time authors. Like the
Yeah.
characters just like doing everything right.
They're all great. Yeah. And
But
everybody's happy and they're all
but
getting along.
there's still tons of stuff about story for me to learn and figure out, especially as you start
Mhm.
exploring different genres.
Yeah.
And I was gobsmacked. I was like, this person is absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't identify it when I was reading it. I couldn't identify uh why the book was not working because it was well written and the characters were good. And I was just
Yeah.
like, it didn't move forward at the point it was supposed to move forward.
Yeah. I'm doing a master class with CS Lakin. She reached out to me and we're putting one together for September on how to construct emotional beats in a scene. And I'm learning so much from her. I'm like, oh, she writes things in her little shared Google Doc, and I'm like, huh, I hadn't thought about that. That's really smart.
That's
Look at
great.
that. Yeah. Okay, last two questions. I bring a question for you, or if you have one, you don't have to have one for me. Um, question for you. We're like 6 months into your massive life change of
Yes.
selling the bookstore and moving to full-time editing, writer coaching.
Yeah. Like
Um,
4 months, but it feels like a year.
is it only 4 months?
Yeah, it
I
was
said six.
March. Yeah, March 1st
Oh
closed.
man, so
Yeah.
we're one quarter in. That's
Yeah.
great. Um, what are you loving about it?
What aren't I loving about it? The thing I'm not loving about it is not living up to my own productivity expectations.
Okay. Yeah, that's hard.
It's so hard when you're at
Yeah.
home. You're at home, you work at home,
I work at home.
right?
It can be hard.
And
Yeah.
and part of it's doom scrolling, but part of it's like virtuous things like doing the dishes, right?
Yep.
Like, it's like go up to get a glass of water and you're like, who left these goddamn dishes in the sink?
Yeah.
uh Cleaning them up, especially since again my wife has an actual job that people depend on, so I tried to do beforehand, but now I
Yeah.
try to do even more of the home stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um so yeah, that's the part I don't like, is that I'm not living up to my expectations. But Jesus, yesterday I took my kid, my kid was going on a whale watch as part
Wow.
of a camp thing.
Nice.
I had to be at Rye Harbor at 8:10.
Yeah.
Dropped him off, went, parked, walked on, did my morning 10,000 steps on the beach, my feet in the water,
Yeah.
you know, uh, then went to the gym and did my sad little weight routine for 25 minutes, trying to make my arms stronger. Went home, took a cold shower because it was ridiculously hot out. And I
Yeah.
was sit at my desk at 10 o'clock.
Wow.
And then I worked, and then I had to go pick up kids and do whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good
like
day,
that.
man.
Yeah. Damn
It's a
good
good
day. No
day.
complaints. No
Yeah.
complaints at all.
It's a good day.
That's why when I say, like people, again, not to get into politics, but people are having their lives wildly upheaved, if upheaved is a word. Uh, and I'm just like, my big upheaval is I'm supposed to pick somebody up at 1, I'm supposed to pick up somebody else at 2, and then I have a phone appointment at 3. I'm like, my entire day of work is in 25-minute
Yeah.
chunks because I have to keep stopping to go do something. And
Yeah.
that's my biggest complaint. And so that's pretty good.
It's a hard not life for Tom.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's a freelance thing that's hard to adjust to, where you always feel behind. You also feel like you don't have enough work.
Yeah. And you're
Like,
nervous about what's coming.
I'm looking at my whiteboard and I'm like, I'm 3 days behind, but as soon as I catch up, I won't have anything to do.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
hard to adjust to. So,
Yeah. It was that way
but
working in nonprofits too. Because especially program-based nonprofits, because we'd finish a program. We're like, oh my gosh, we're behind, we're behind, we're behind. We'd finish the program and then we'd be like, oh crap, what do we do next? It's like, oh no. Yeah. And you'd plan out, but you were always like, there was always an end to the plan. And then you're like, wait, what comes after? Yeah. Oh man. Um, okay. Anything else we want to talk about?
no, well, my question for you is always the same, which is your productivity is insane. You're like, oh, I'm doing this seminar. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm taking a kid to college. I'm picking up a kid from college. I'm writing a screenplay. And, I know you've worked at it a long time, but it's impressive. And, feel free to give any more tips.
Um,
Because you also sound like you doom scroll. That's the thing. It's like,
I don't doom scroll. Um, I highly limit my social media intake because I don't find it. Yeah, so I'll say two things about it. One thing is, um, I'm in a season of very difficult productivity right now because I have a lot of fishing rods in the water, but none of them have caught a fish. So, and that's tough because you're just like with the screenplay stuff. I'm writing screenplays. I enjoy it. I turned the new screenplay into Sean. He was immediately like, we have to go to lunch. And I was like, because I gave him act one first. And he was like, we have to go to lunch. And I was like, oh crap. I totally screwed up and he's mad at me. And he's going to tell me never to do this again. And we sit down for lunch and he goes, I get story credit. I'm like, okay, well, if you're worried about story credit, I've done something good.
that's a
Because
good sign.
I really changed act one in some pretty huge ways. And he's like, I get story credit. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you get all, I don't care. Thank you for letting me be at lunch. And then he's like, this is a $3 million option. They're going to option this for $3 million. And I'm like, That'd be great. He's
Yeah,
like,
you're
this
like,
is,
okay, I'm ready.
yeah, let's do that. Like, I want to do that. He's like, this is, you got to finish it, and then we're going to sell it for, they're not even going to, they may not even make it, but they're just going to pay us $3 million just to have the screenplay. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't actually believe him. I'm like, sure. Um, maybe in the 80s, but I was like, not now. So anyway, but he's like really excited. And I'm like, hey, this is fantastic. I should write. So I go home, I finish the screenplay in 2 weeks. Like, and the truth is, I finished it in 3 days, but I spent a week and a half not working on it. And then
Mhm.
he sent me an email. He's like, "Where is it? We money on the table." He keeps texting me, "Money on the table." And so, like, all right. So I finish it and I give it to him. And I'm like, all right, well, that's another pole in the water.
Mhm.
I don't know if it'll ever pay off. I don't know if it'll ever come to anything. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I really love Sean. I love working with Sean. He's got amazing stories. He's a really interesting guy. He's really, really smart. And so like, but that's just a fishing pole in the water. JP and I are doing a Nerds Kickstarter. JP's last Kickstarter went really well, but it was for books by JP, which are very different than the ones he writes with
Right.
me. And it's for they're cozies. And Nerds is not a cozy. I say the F bomb way too much for it to be a cozy. And will it do anything? I don't know. So I think the hard part of being productive. Like I'm doing this thing with CS Lakin. She reached out to me. I was very honored. She was like, "Hey, do you want to do a master class together?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And then she's telling me like, "This is how many people came to my last one that I did with this person." And I'm telling her, I'm like, "Well, I'm not that person, so I don't know that we're gonna have that many people." And we're doing it, and I'm like, "But I don't know if this will come to anything." And a lot of the fishing poles, like I'll put fishing poles in the water. I won't talk about these directly because that's mean, but I put fishing poles in the water and they don't come. Well, the memoir is a good example. I was
Yeah.
working with a publisher. I spent a lot of time working with him. We passed the book back and forth. We did a ton of stuff, and I finally came to the conclusion of like this. There's no fish in this pond. Nothing here's going to catch. This isn't like. And then it's like, well, I wasted all this time. But so I think there's a in driving motivation and like being productive. I think you have to say yes. That would be you have to say yes. You
Hmm.
have to, when somebody's like, do you want to fish this pond? Don't overanalyze the pond. Just say yes. Like the year of yes by, oh, I can't remember
Shonda Rhimes.
Sandra Rhimes is a great book because she just talks about like, hey, the most productive year of my life was the year where I just said yes to everybody. And it feels crazy because I have like right now, I have like 10 projects. I'm behind on all of them. And I don't know if any of them are going to pay off, but something's got to catch. Like there's,
Yeah.
the law of averages, something will catch at some point. But then I wrote 13 novels and none of them caught. So I don't know. Like, so, but then the other thing about productivity, I'd say is that, you have to, I eliminate things that most people do that I don't have the power to control or change. I don't, I don't have any power over doom scrolling the news.
Mhm.
There's nothing I can do to control it or change it. So I read the Baltimore Banner headlines and saw and many of the articles every morning. It's my local paper, and I read. I devote 20 minutes to the New York Times, and then I listen to specific podcasts, but only I like specific political podcasts, but only if they're talking about things that I think are going to like that I can either have the power to change or have impact on my life or the life of the people around me. And but I don't just doom scroll because it's just a waste of time and energy. And when I'm done with it, I feel sad. And like I'm pretty much off of Facebook, which is hard because I have high school friends on there that are hysterical, but at the same time, Facebook shows me less and less of them. I was literally just looking at AI created crap all the time. And I was like, there's nothing here to this. There's no point to this. So I stopped doing it. I don't have any games on my phone, right? Like it's not that I don't love playing games. I love playing Clash Royale. I love it. I could spend like 8 hours playing Clash Royale, but it doesn't give me anything. It doesn't do anything So I don't do that. So I think that's my productivity tip is that I find for me anyway, there's a lot of things I fill my time with that don't benefit me in the long term. And if you want to be productive, you have to remove those. You have to
Yeah.
sacrifice short term and immediate benefit to put more fishing poles in the water. And that isn't fun.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's
It's no
good. I
fun.
think
Yeah.
part of it's for me, like for my creative work, I can't I backtrack constantly because I have to get in the mood to go forward. And so
Yeah.
I can't grab 10-minute. You hear about people who are like, oh, I wrote it in 10-minute chunks and
I
I
don't work
can't
that
do
way.
it.
I
And
can't work that way.
and instead the 10-minute chunks get eaten up doing dumb stuff. So I need to
Yeah.
rearrange the schedule to get bigger
Well, that's not
blocks
true.
of time.
There are things that I can do in 10-minute chunks, and I think for me, part of it is about understanding what those are. Like thinking about the master class with C.S. Lakin. That is not a good activity for me to block out time to do because I'll sit there and just kind of look at the screen and be like, I don't know. And I'll ponder all kinds of things that aren't important. It's better for me to put that in the back of my brain and then keep my journal here. And I'll be working on something and I'll go, oh, that kind of relates to this topic. And then I'll write it down and then I go on to what I was working on. And that's really helpful. It's the same like right now I'm plotting my next screenplay. I could sit down for like a 3 hour chunk and plot that thing, but I don't think it's going to come out very well because I need it to simmer. So I just have it in the back of my head and I got my whiteboard over here. And when something happens that I think is like might relate, I just take my marker and I wrote up there today. What if I heard somebody talking on this thing I was listening to about a divorce rom-com coming out where it's a rom-com, but it's about a divorce. And so I was like, oh. And so I wrote on this whiteboard, divorce rom-com. And I like that may be, I was struggling with this idea of this screenplay I've got. That may be what cracks it. I don't know. But I can't sit for 3 hours and plan that. I have to do that in like 5 second intervals and I have to keep them somewhere where I can get to all of them so that when I am ready to take 30 minutes to sit down and like actually plot this thing out, all of my ideas are generated. I don't have to like spend an hour generating ideas. They're all there. So that's helpful. But I can't do that when I write. When I write a Nerds episode, I need 2 hours of uninterrupted time. And because it takes me 30 minutes to get started because I'm a dork and I have to like fart around and not do it and walk around the room and like, laugh with one of my kids and like go get another glass of water and then sit back down and finally I'm like, fine, I'll do it. And then I write like 150 words and I'm like, ah, and I like walk around again. So I need like 2 hours to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I think I can't just like fire things off in 20 minutes. I'm fast, but the reason like I finished a screenplay in kind of 3 days, but to be clear, that was like 5 hours a night after everybody had gone to bed. Well, my kids are watching through all the M. Night Shyamalan movies. So they were watching Glass and Split and Glass. And while they were watching Split and Glass, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote. And it's like that kind of like, I have to miss out on watching those two things with
Yeah.
them. But yeah, anyway, that's a ramble. And you have to go. Speaking of, you got to go
I gotta
watch
go
the
watch
Suzuka. So we're wrapping it
Castle.
up.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts? Any last words?
Uh, no, I don't know why anyone would listen to Time with Tom, but if you're here at the end, thank you for
People love
listening
Time with
to
Tom.
Time with Tom.
People, this is one of our most listened to things. Where can people find your coaching and editing?
Authorhelp.net,
Authorhelp.net.
world's
All right.
best domain.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right, see you.